Hi everyone, it's Aid from Fade Photography, and today we're looking at focus stacking, a technique used in all sorts of things like macro, but in this instance it was up at Settle, and we've got this scene here where I've taken 3 photos and I've focused on them at different points. So let's just show you why. Here we are, these are the 3, so I'll just make these yellow so we know which ones they are. So the first shot I focused on the foreground down here, so you can see that's lovely and sharp. I was at f8 for this exercise. f8 is often the sharpest your lens gets, but the depth of field isn't infinite, so you can see we're pretty sharp to the edge of these foreground rocks, which is there, but when we get to that wall in the midground and certainly Ingleborough in the background, that's gone blurry and we can't see the barn there. So what do? We take one which isn't focused on the foreground, so that's a little bit blurry, but it is focused on the end of these stones. See how lovely and sharp they are now, and the wall's sharp, and the background's probably fairly sharp. You can see Ingleborough there. Maybe the quarry isn't pin sharp. So we took a final one which I focused on the background, and you can see all that is nice and sharp compared to the other 2. So if I go back to the first one, that's pretty much like when I take my glasses off. That's what the world looks like, and that's what it looks like when I put them on. So we've got the 3 photos. What do we do with them? Well, I think the first thing you would do is go for an edit. I'm going to actually show you this new adaptive colour thing in Lightroom. Adaptive colour. You click on that, and it does a kind of auto levels really. You've got a slider here where you can increase and decrease the sort of factor of it, but I think it does quite a nice job. It gives you a nice start point, and then as it's a landscape I might give it a little bit of texture and clarity. Let's maybe bring those highlights down a bit so the sky's nice. Shadows, quite like deep shadows on these Clinton Greig shots. Up with the whites ever so slightly, maybe a bit more colour. Let's just grab these greens, maybe let's get a bit of grass, and let's just make those a little bit more vibrant, and maybe a bit more on the sort of bluey green side. Okay, so that's just a preliminary tweak. That's just to show you before and after of the colour mixer change. I mean, you could argue that the sky is a little bit too dark blue now, so you can click on there with the colour mixer and maybe up the illuminance a little bit, bring back the saturation ever so slightly, just to make it look a little bit more realistic. Right, so that is just the basics done. So I'm going to click my control key on the keyboard and tap in turn on both of the others, hit sync and click check all. So for this exercise you want them all to have the same changes, so all 3 of them look pretty similar. Right, so we've got all 3 selected. Right click on the timeline there. Well, it's not a timeline, is it? It's a thumbnail line. Go to edit, in open as layers in Photoshop. So we can use layers quite often with other techniques. I'd probably go for smart objects. Gives you a bit more power if it's a smart object, but for this, layers are perfectly fine. So opens up automatically in Photoshop. As you can see, these come in as a bit of a stack. So we've got the 3 layers. So with the top one selected, I put my finger on the shift key and click on the bottom ones, and now we go up to edit, auto align layers, and go for automatic. I mean, you can put vignette removal and geometric distortion. I don't know whether that's a big issue with stacking, but you tend to do it when you're doing panoramics. Well, let's leave it on anyway. So what this is doing, it's analysing all 3 layers, and it'll, you know, realign them a little bit. They shouldn't be too far out because they're all taken on a tripod within, you know, a couple of seconds of each other. But when you change the focus the optics do change a little bit. So as you can see, it's having to work hard. These are R5 files, so the 45 megapixels. Right, so we've done the align. Now the fun bit is auto blend layers. So it's in the same menu, edit, auto blend layers, and it will cleverly see that it's a stack rather than a panorama. So it will click select stack images, and we hit that, and when it's done, what you'll see is it produces a final merged shot, but you will get the 3 images with a mask on. So you can see which, that's the midground one, I guess. That will be the foreground one. That's the background one. Add them together and you've got a fully stitched image. So if you zoom into 100%, so if you go down at the bottom, that's pretty sharp. I mean, sometimes it looks a little bit unsharp there. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's just too close. I mean, but this is nice and sharp. The midground's nice and sharp. The wall. So you've got front to back sharpness. I don't think even at sort of shooting f22 and finding the hyperfocal distance, which is a topic for another day, but it's about a third of the way into a photo. I think even if you got that right, you would end up with something slightly softer in the foreground, slightly softer in the background than this. But in this case, everything's spot on. What would you do next? Well, I'd probably go Control J. Whoops, not twice. Hang on. Let's get rid of those. I'll just duplicate this. So you can right click on it and duplicate layer. And what I'm going to do, because Photoshop's pretty good at getting rid of things, I'm going to get my lasso tool and get rid of the tripod. So let's just draw around it like that. And this generative fill box down here is quite cool. All you need to do is say remove shadow, and I've even hit return, and it will give you 2 or 3 options usually. And yeah, fairly simple one to do. I mean, you can't really argue with that. You can have a look at the other ones if you wanted to. All 3 of them are pretty much spot on. I mean, there is a shadow on this boulder here. That's a head-shaped shadow. So, and I think you can actually see my tripod leg there as well. So let's see what it does to this. So just remove shadow from rock. Okay. Always interesting to see what comes up with these more complex ones. I mean, as long as it replaces it with something that looks real and doesn't look like someone's head. Well, there you go. I mean, that looks real enough, doesn't it? Let's just have a zoom in. So Control Alt 0. Yeah, I think you struggle to spot that. Try another one. That may be better because it just keeps the stone. I think the middle one, for my money, I think that's done a great job. So we'll keep that. And now if you wanted to continue to edit it, I'll just get rid of this box over there. I mean, what you could do, I've got this panel here called what's it called? Raya. And you can do a little bit of dodging and burning, so let's do a little bit of that. So what this is doing, it's making a luminosity selection, and anything that's white will be affected and anything that's black will be left alone. So if I click on that, now if I get my brush and brush white onto these things, you'll notice that anything that was white on that mask is getting brighter, but things like these shadows down here are left untouched. So it's quite a cool way of just focusing on certain spots. Now you can do the same with shadows. So in this instance we just want the dark bits to be white. So if you look, if you remember, this was all in shadow here. So what I'm going to do is just maybe darken the shadows a little bit just to up the contrast in the photo. So in this instance we brush black onto it to darken the shadows, and white if you wanted to see a little bit more. So I'm on a very low brush. It's on 18% flow. So I just think maybe just add a little bit of gravity to that cloud over Ingleborough. I don't know if we can just add a little bit of depth into these clouds here. Look, there we go. And if you're unconvinced by that, you can just click on the little eye tool. I think it helps. Is there any shadows you would raise? I'll just show you what it does. If you wanted that to be, see, it's making that less shadowy down there because I've brushed white onto it. If I go back to black, so this is dodging and burning. You can do it in Lightroom as well. It's just sometimes a bit easier. Another one is Instamask. You can go for colours. So if I click on colour and then tick this sort of green area here, what it'll do, it'll create a mask which just covers those green areas. Now you can increase how much green it selects if you wanted to, or decrease it by pressing these plus and minus keys. All I'm going to do, I'm going to just increase the saturation of those. So you've got these sliders here, which is effectively a levels control. I'm not sure it's the best thing in the world, but I'm going to just increase how much green is being selected. Okay, and then you can choose to go for a hue saturation layer in Photoshop, and as ever with hue saturation, you've just got the slider to increase or decrease the saturation. You can change the colour of the colour. I think I want to keep it greenish. If you wanted to brighten or darken, what you'll notice that I've selected green, but grass is often in the yellow sort of spectrum rather than the green, which is a bit of a surprise when you first start editing, but you know, that's just how it is. Anyway, so that's the little bit of extra there for you. I'll just group those together and hide them just to show you the little tweaks, all of which could be done in Lightroom, so don't get too worried if you're not a Photoshop person. Now you can save all this away and it'll be a big file, probably over 1 gigabyte, or you can go to layer. If you're confident you've got it where you want it, you can go to layer, flatten image, goes down to one file, hit Ctrl S to save, pop back to Lightroom, and we'll just wait. You can see it's on its way. Oh, it's there. Well, that was quick. And what you can notice at the top where it was stitching, it's got these little dots, so you're best off do the crop now whilst you're thinking about it. So go to the crop tool, R. It's probably going to be the same at the bottom, so I'm just going to grab that. And one thing I do like on my landscapes, just to drag people's eyes to where they should be, sort of central, is just give it a little bit of a vignette. I might even increase the saturation on the blue channel, which I don't know, just works wonders on landscapes. And yeah, any final tweaks you can think of, and there you go. So that's before, well, the actual before, that's where we started out, that look, and the final shot a little bit more punchy and colourful.